She woke up on the bathroom floor, 32 years old, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, curled up on cold tile. On the outside, her life looked amazing, like the kind of life any woman might want. A husband, a home, a successful writing career, and she was completely falling apart. Because for years, she was running the same pattern, the same program, the same relationship dynamics, the same cycle of losing herself in a life that looked right, but felt completely hollow. She tried to fix it. She tried everything she could to fix it. But she just poured new effort onto old grooves, and the old grooves won every time. That night on the bathroom floor, something shifted. She stopped performing, and she was able to be quiet for the first time in a decade, quiet enough to hear the sound of a pattern. And that was the interruption that she needed. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have a video course she found online. Just a moment of radical honesty that interrupted the program, that cracked the wall. She left her marriage. She left the country. She spent a year traveling to Italy, India, and Indonesia. She wrote about it. The world read it. And millions of people saw themselves in her story, not because she had an extraordinary life, but because her pattern was universal. Her name is Elizabeth Gilbert. And the book she wrote on the other side of that pattern interruption was called Eat, Pray, Love. Now a major motion picture. She was not broken. She was just running a pattern that had never been interrupted. And the moment she did interrupt it, everything changed. What they don't tell you about change is this: motivation is not the problem. Willpower is not the problem. You are not the problem. The pattern is the problem. And it's been running so long, so quietly, so automatically, that most of us don't even know it's there. Your brain is extraordinary at one thing above all other things. It's not critical thinking, it's not creativity, it's not even love. It's efficiency. Your brain's entire job is to take multi-step systems and make them automatic. Think about the first time you drove a car. Your hands on the steering wheel, how frightened you were, white-knuckling it, checking every mirror every minute, narrating every maneuver in your head before executing it in the car. Now you can drive 40 minutes and not remember a single second of the drive. That's not a flaw in your brain. That's a feature. Neuroscientists call it automaticity. The rest of us just call it autopilot. And it's brilliant until the pattern your brain decides to adopt is a pattern that keeps you stuck or holds you back. Because here's what happens when you try to change a pattern without interrupting it first. You're pouring new effort into the old grooves, and the old grooves win every single time. Think of every person you know that's, and maybe you are this person, that's started over on a Monday. They've bought the journal, they've downloaded the app, they've hired the coach, they've watched the TED Talk, hopefully this one. And they started and they felt that fire on Monday only to see it fizzle out by Wednesday. That's not because they're weak. It's because they tried to build a new house on an old foundation without ever breaking the ground first. Your brain doesn't care how motivated you are. It cares about efficiency, remember. And the most efficient thing it can do is run the pattern it already has. This is where most conversations about change tend to stop. They tell you to want it more, to try harder, to find your why. And all of those things are great. They're beautiful, but they're fuel. And fuel, when poured into a sealed engine, it goes nowhere. Before you change the pattern, you have to interrupt it. Not completely. You don't need a crisis moment. You don't need to hit rock bottom. You just need one pattern interruption to crack the wall. And the harder you swing that hammer, the bigger the result. Because, look, the brain doesn't need a wrecking ball. It needs a precise strike. One moment where the automatic becomes conscious. Kurt Levine, one of the most influential psychoanalysts of the 20th century, he studied how humans change. Not how they say they'll change, how they actually change. And what he discovered was that before any new behavior could take root, the old pattern had to be unfrozen first. He called it the unfreezing stage. Think of ice. You can't reshape ice by pushing harder against it. You need to melt it first. The pattern interruption is the melting. And here's where it gets fascinating. Your brain has a system called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. Maybe you've heard of it. Its entire job is to filter reality based on the program that you have installed in your unconscious mind. It dictates what you see and what stays invisible. It filters out evidence that a new life is even possible, not because it isn't there, but because it thinks it isn't relevant. Remember, efficiency above all else. Now, the moment when you interrupt a program, when you crack that wall, your RAS recalibrates, and you begin to see new opportunities, new options, new exits. Not because they were never there, but because they were made invisible by your pattern, and they were made visible by the interruption. I know this because I lived on autopilot for more years than I'd like to admit. I checked every box in my life, just like Elizabeth. I went to a great school, had a great career, a growing family, a house in the suburbs, everything I should ever want. And I felt completely hollow. I tried to change my life. I went to the seminars, I read the books, I had the conversations, but within a few days to a few weeks, I would always go back to the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same habits, the same life. I thought I was the problem. I thought maybe there was something fundamentally wrong with me that someone like me couldn't change. I thought I was broken. I wasn't broken. I was just running a pattern that had never been interrupted. And the moment that changed everything for me, unfortunately, came during a rock bottom moment in my life. Now, that's not required of everybody. In fact, if you're listening to this talk, you now know you don't need to hit rock bottom or a crisis moment to interrupt patterns in your life. You can do it with one single pattern interruption. And that's what I did. I chose one thing small enough to where my brain didn't panic, but intentional enough to where it registered as a choice. That one interruption cracked the wall for me. And through that crack, something new got in. Then I interrupted another pattern, and then another pattern. And eventually, that one interruption turned into a multitude of interruptions. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen by Wednesday. But it did happen. And for the first time in my life, I remember I became someone I actually recognized. Have you ever experienced that? Here's what I need you to understand. The first 15 days of any pattern interruption are always the hardest. That's because your brain's going to fight you. It's going to tell you it's not working. It's going to manufacture evidence. and every reason to return you to the old grooves, because old and familiar is efficient and new is not, at least not yet. Neuroscientists call this synaptic resistance. It's your brain's natural defense of its existing neural pathways. Now, it's not a weakness, it's just your biology. And if you know it's coming, you can survive it. Because on the other side of those 15 days, something shifts. The new pattern begins to take root. The resistance you feel softens. That crack in the wall becomes a door. You don't need to change your life by Monday to start living the life that you want to live. You need at least one pattern interruption, but imagine how you would change if you could stack multiple pattern interruptions at once. Remember, one's all you need to begin to change, but a multitude of pattern interruptions, carefully curated, carefully planned, will change your life. Before you leave this room, I want you to think of one pattern, one way in which you're on autopilot. It might be the way you start your morning. It could be the way that you respond when someone challenges you. It could be the story you tell yourself about why you can't do this or aren't capable of that. It could be the way you show up or don't show up in an area of your life where you most want to change. I want you to find that pattern, and then I want you to name it, and then I want you to interrupt it. Not tomorrow, today. Because the most important part of any transformation isn't the day you decide to transform. It's the moment you interrupt the program that has been deciding for you. Elizabeth Gilbert didn't set out to write one of the most beloved books of the 21st century. She set out to survive a night on the bathroom floor. Remember, she didn't have a plan. No online video course that she found. She had that one moment of radical honesty, and that changed everything because it led to that pattern interruption, which changed her life. And that one interruption turned into multiple interruptions conducted over a short period of time, which led to a year overseas, a book read by tens of millions of people, and a life that she could actually recognize as her own. She wasn't special. She wasn't free of fear. She wasn't particularly brave. She was a woman who interrupted a pattern that was directing her life. You can interrupt a pattern too. You aren't broken. You never were. You were just waiting for someone to show you where the pattern interruption button is. And now you know.